But you'd show it, you've got it short, you show it, yours is only different parts. valuable, I'd like to invite Juan Calderon. Where's Juan? Do I see? All right. From Kalosha to provide a presentation on our worker health and safety.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I want to thank the City of Sacramento for inviting the Division of Occupational Safety and Health to be here to speak to you regarding what the Division of Occupational Safety and Health is doing regarding our new industry here in California relating to cannabis. The presentation that I'm going to be going through basically was put together by one of our senior safety engineers. She happens to be a certified industrial hygienist. Her name is Amalia Neilhart, and she works with our standards research unit. And this was put together pursuant to the passage of the Medical Marijuana Act, which again was the result of we, Californians, wishing to legalize the use of marijuana. And through our stakeholders, a petition was filed with the division that requested that the Division of Occupational Safety and Health look at the development of safety and health standards for this industry. Well, the petition was accepted by the Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board, and it was forwarded to the Kalosha Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Committee. And this presentation is basically what was presented to them to address the future proposal of developing industry-specific standards. And one of the findings that we'll see at the end is that when we look at California's body of safety and health orders, we'll find that we basically cover 100% of the industry with the existing orders that relate to occupational safety and health of workers, okay? So Kalosha's mission, again, deals with that relationship of where I have an employer, and that employer has workers in his duty, pursuant to both the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 and to California's commitment to occupational safety and health under the California Labor Code. So the main thing is when we look at California's commitment to occupational safety and health, we need to go back to 1989 when California State Legislature passed Senate Bill 198, which became known in the world of occupational safety and health and in business, be a manager and go to jail. Senate Bill 198 basically requires every employer in the state of California to have a written injury and illness prevention program. The program needs to be implemented and it needs to be effective. So basically when we look at California and enforcing the industry, well, basically we'll see that one of the things that we have identified is going to be the requirements for the injury and illness prevention program. So how do I move the slides? So basically, when we look at the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, we have Kalosha Enforcement. Kalosha Enforcement is that division of the division that basically, whose mission is to ensure that every employer provides a safe and healthful work environment. And how do we do that? Well, we are the ones that we visit California's workplaces and we conduct inspections of that workplace to ensure that the employers provide a safe and healthful work environment. And why do we show up at your workplace? Well, Our agreement with the federal government states that the division shall investigate every work-related death that occurs in the state of California. We do have some exceptions. The district managers will basically elect not to investigate certain work-related deaths. I die from a personal health condition in my workplace. I have a heart attack. Happens every day. Or maybe I die on a California highway. Those currently are investigated by the local jurisdictions, California Highway Patrol, okay? So, but we are mandated to investigate every workplace fatality. Also, the federal law requires us to investigate serious injuries that occur in California workplaces. We are required to investigate every complaint made to the division relating to occupational safety and health in the workplace. We're required to investigate by a site visit every complaint that is made by the following. If we receive a referral from a regulatory agency, we do an on-site inspection. If we receive a referral from a physician that has diagnosed an occupational related disease of a worker due to his work, we are required to investigate. If the employer is signatory, we are required to investigate complaints made by the shop steward, the business agent. And then the other and most important one, it is when the worker files a complaint with the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, and he states, I am working at this site. If we receive complaints which are anonymous or from former employees, those are deemed to be informal complaints and are investigated by a letter that is submitted to the employer. So the mission of Cal Lucia is to ensure that every employer conducts a safe and healthy work environment. And how do we do it? We inspect your workplace, and we enforce California Code of Regulations Title 8. We also have the consultation unit. Their mission is totally independent of Cal Lucia enforcement. Their funding is totally independent and separate, and their mission is to work with employers and to provide professional safety and health consulting with the employers. Actually, I have Michael Alvarez right over there. He used to be the regional manager for Cal Lucia Consultation here in Sacramento. Stand up, Michael. And he's part of my staff in the outreach unit, okay? And then we have a whole body of resources. We'll talk a little bit about you utilizing our website that you can access. I use Google. I put Cal Lucia Consultation, and it'll take me to the home page, and I can access all the literature that's available there. And again, we'll talk about these labor code sections that relate to the cannabis industry. Okay. Okay, again, we have DOSH, which is us. We have the Standards Board. They're the ones that develop all the standards. They're the ones that were actively involved in determining whether the cannabis industry had to be independently regulated beyond what we already have. We have the Occupational Safety and Health Appeals Board. It is an administrative judicial board that hears appeals from employers after an inspection by enforcement has been done, to which they can appeal any violation issued to them, okay? The board has the authority to affirm a violation as written. The board has the authority to amend it, amend the penalties, amend the classification of the violation, or to withdraw it, okay? So if you're an employer, I recommend that you become knowledgeable in the appeals board process. Okay, this is our website right here, readily available at the World Wide Web, dir.california, okay? And it's accessible, and it's a tremendous resource for you, okay? And all you have to do is use the search bar, write whatever you're looking for, and hit that magnifying glass, and if we have literature available for you, you'll find it. Okay. What have we done regarding investigation of workplaces involving cannabis? Well, I recently did a presentation involving this industry where I requested our people that get involved in the statistical data. We've done 6 investigations in the last 18 months relating to cannabis, okay? And this incident right here is the most significant one that we have. It occurred in the city of Watsonville. This was a manufacturing facility. This means that they had already harvested the cannabis, and they were in the process of doing the extraction of BDC, okay? That is one of the elemental components that we extract from cannabis and which is being then further utilized in the market for, you name it, from pain to feeling good is being used. Or they're extracting THC, okay? The process was utilizing a very common gas that we're familiar with here. How many of you have barbecuers at home? Huh? How many like to use propane to barbecue their meat? Well, in the cannabis industry, we utilize a great body of solvents, and one of them happens to be propane. And in this process here, they were using propane to be the solvent to extract the BDC from the leaf in a closed-loop process. The shop where this is being done was a container cargo. So just imagine those containers that you see rolling down the road every day. That was the extraction facility. It was a closed-loop system. They were injecting the propane gas in one end, and it was going through the system, it was going through the leaves and everything else, and at the end they were getting the product. Well, the system was leaking. The propane gas was escaping into the container. It is unknown specifically where the ignition source came from. What we do know is that it ignited. The result was the worker that was inside there suffered third-degree burns. He was treated at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. The Division of Occupational Safety and Health, Fremont District Office investigated the incident. Well, what did we learn? Well, we learned that the employer did not even know what an intravenous prevention program was. The employer didn't even know that propane was flammable. The propane actually vaporized and basically became explosive at certain levels if there was an ignition source. Well, the division ended up citing the employer, and we issued citations and significant penalties. Okay, so this is the most significant of them. The other inspections are basically still open, and I cannot identify the employers. But this employer here actually made the news media, was Future 2 Labs, okay? So, okay. So in our website, you'll find that we have a lot of information about cannabis, okay? And we have this frequently asked questions regarding cannabis that's available for you. And if you have the question, you'll probably find an answer there, okay? Okay, and again, this is what the Callosia consultation homepage looks like, and then you can find a lot of free publications there. A lot of these publications you can cut and copy, or you can print them as they are. It's all public documents, okay? There's no copyright issues or anything that you have to deal with, okay? So you can utilize them for your personal knowledge or for the training of your workers. Okay. We have information for the workers how to file a complaint with the division, okay? Okay. California's User's Guide. This one has just been recently updated, and it has been amended to cover all the most recent changes in California law that impact your workplace. It's a tremendous publication. It's available on the internet, okay? We may have some there in the back. We have publications there for you there in the window back there, free for you to take, okay? I know that yesterday I had 100 of those over in Hayfork, California, where I did an event involving cannabis with 70 growers there. So I had 100 of these, so I don't know, I still have some. But it's available on the internet. Great document. Okay. So what are the things that we find in your industry? Well, the first thing is that because many of you are brand new business people to the industry and may have not known that you are regulated by the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, and you are required to have an injury and illness prevention program. What we are finding is that they don't even know that they have to have this written program pursuant to California state law, okay? And that happens to be the most cited violation in the state of California year after year. We issue about 4,000 violations a year regarding the lack of having an effective injury and illness prevention program when we look at general industry and the construction industry together. Limited means of egress, especially dealing with sites where they're doing indoor cultivation, processing facilities not having adequate egress or egress from the facility. Electrical hazards. With the indoor cultivation, one of the things that we find that the presence of a lot of water and everything else, electrical systems are being exposed to moisture. So we're looking to ensuring that you have ground fault interrupters, that you have intrinsically safe systems when you are having water there available. Many times, extension cords being used in lieu of permanent electrical wiring, okay? Sanitation facilities, okay? That means we have to have toilets for our workers. We have to have hand washing facilities for them, soap, paper towels. One of the comments that we can make right now that we are beginning to address is the issue regarding to transgender toilet facilities. California law states that the employer shall have a single-use toilet facility for its transgender population and properly identified to that effect. Unisex toilets, right? When it comes to the agricultural industry, we use portalets, and portalets are not defined to be a toilet because they are not plumbed. The one thing is that we, what's being commented is that if you have a mixed population, that if you take one of the women portalets and put a label appropriately to identify the multiple sex usage, so that if you do have an individual that is transgender, he may use that one, okay? But portalets are not defined to be toilets pursuant to the general industry safety orders because they are not plumbed. Hazard communication program, as I stated, in the processing industry, we use a tremendous number of chemical products. So you are required to have a written hazard communication program. You are required to have an inventory of all the chemicals that you use. You are required to have the safety data sheets for every chemical that you use. You are required to train your employees on your hazard communication program. You are required to train your employees to understand terms like combustible, flammable, explosive, corrosive, etc. To identify, for them to understand the hazards of that chemical they are using in the workplace, okay? And that is covered under hazard communication. You are also required to ensure that all containers are properly labeled when you are doing transferring from a large container to smaller containers. One of our most cited violations in the top 10 every year. If you are using corrosives in the workplace, You are required to provide eye protection, and you are required to provide, again, personal protective equipment for the worker, but most of all, you are required to have a eye wash station that will give 15 minutes of free-flowing water once activated. If the chemicals can contaminate the body, then you have to have an emergency shower. Both of these systems have to be no more than 10 seconds distance from where the exposure occurred, okay? Can you use portable eye washes? You sure can. Free-flowing eye washes are available on the market. They sell for less than $1,000 a piece, and they're rated to give you 15 minutes worth of water. Okay. Storing incompatible chemicals, again, is something, again, that for the manufacturing industry, you need to be able to understand which chemicals you cannot store together. Okay. Again, when we look at manufacturing, we have a lot of machinery and equipment utilized that has moving parts of machinery that can cut and result in severe injuries to the body, amputations, etc. And then the other one, yesterday afternoon, the question asked to me was, well, what is the workplace violence in the cannabis industry? Well, here in California, we know that the greatest risk in the cannabis industry is in the dispensing end of the industry, is that when you are having the people order the product from you and you send out a carrier with it, is, well, you should be aware that there's people watching your door. There are people out there watching who's leaving, what they're taking with them. And now they become the target because they're looking at a couple things. Yeah, okay. Money being exchanged, and the other one is what they're carrying with them, okay? Workplace violence in the cannabis industry, okay? Those are the main things that, we deal with, okay? And again, Cal OSHA's regulatory efforts, again, as we're looking at your industry and it's changing. And again, this is being done through our advisory board and the standards board. But it's been stated, we believe that our body of safety orders contained in Title 8 cover the industry totally in general. Okay, and again, here's the California Labor Code, and again, which basically required the division to look at your industry by going through the advisory committee and looking to see whether we're going to develop regulations specific to you, okay? I'll be here through the end of the meeting, more than glad to answer all your questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Look at that. She can run the PowerPoint. Just use the one that's on already. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to move through this and then have lots of time for questions, or we can have time for questions as we go. So where are we at? We have 211 CUPs approved. There's not a whole lot more activity happening on the CUP front. If you have a CUP in process and you have questions, you should be communicating regularly with the Community Development Department and the folks working on that. Business operating permits, 364 submitted. We've issued operating and non-op, 271 pending and 23 denied. The majority of those that were denied were people who we just saw no activity on permits. So we went ahead and denied those and then are moving through the process with those who may be asking for reconsideration on those denied permits. Everybody is aware of, we had some dates and deadlines happen for construction of facilities to get your building permit, September 9, to have an operating permit by January 31. So Any registered cultivator operating after January 31st, 2020 will need to stop operating. And one of the conversations we just had today with our partners in our code enforcement is, what does that mean? Is anyone here from code enforcement? Yes, there's oh, sorry, Kiona. Kiona's sitting in the back, and Peter Lemos, who is the new division manager of code enforcement. What that means on February 1 is if you don't have your operating permits, the registration is over, and we will be enforcing all of our current laws relative to cultivation without a permit. So I want that to be very clear. We're going to have a reminder letter that goes out. We will be outlining that for you. It should be no surprise come February of 2020 relative to that. We need to move on from the notion of registration and move into that permitted and regulated industry. And if you are continuing to move through the process, the expectation is after that date you are not operating while you continue to move through the process of getting your operating permit. Okay, any questions on that? Yes. Yeah.
So how does this pertain to core eligible folks who are still in the process of getting technical assistance, legal assistance, as well as business consulting assistance, so that they can eventually get to this process?
I'll restate, Jamie. So the question was, how does this pertain to the core participants who are currently going through a process of orienting to the business and going through an application process? My expectation is that it really wouldn't, because I don't believe that there are core applicants who currently have a registered cultivation site. And so this is really to deal...
That's correct.
Yeah, so this is really to deal with those who registered back in 2016 and have not yet gotten legal. So we are going to anticipate that we are still going to get operating permit applications from new people entering the market, and we will figure out our dates and deadlines for those people, but this is really dealing with something that was set up several years ago, and to move those people through what has been an extraordinarily long and generous and reasonable process to get their operating permits. Those are people who are operating now without a permit, and we want to get those people legal.
Yeah, but do you know how many of those folks are actually core program participants who may have been struggling to get through the process?
So here is the reality. We have given everybody the opportunity who is currently registered to come talk to us about why they can or cannot get legal. And most of these people who have a registered dispensary have already come to us and said, either I can or I can't, and here's my situation, and we are working with them. So if you are aware of a core applicant who is participating in a cultivation facility that was registered, that will not meet that deadline, they need to come talk to us. But I don't believe there are any.
Okay, but has any research been done to identify those who are? Because there have been folks who've been trying to get compliant, but they're having some difficulties in terms of getting through the process as they continue to operate, so that they don't go into poverty.
Every applicant has been communicated to. So we don't need to research it, because everybody has received affirmative communication about this and provided the opportunity to communicate back to us. Both the people who own the land, so those who own the conditional use permit, as well as the individuals who have applied for a permit. So, and again, it is only the registered cultivator, which is a very unique subset, and they have all received purposeful, explicit, direct communication. So there is no need for us to match up. They are ready, willing, and able to come to us and talk to us about where they are in the process if they can't meet that deadline.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand the numbers on the previous slide that you had in terms of how many people. There's a huge number of people that didn't get through the process.
But not all of them were registered cultivators. So Malachi, perhaps you and I could talk offline about that.
Okay.
There are a lot of folks going through a permit process to get a permit, whether it be delivery, manufacture, distribution, or cultivation. And we are explicit about those who are currently cultivating, who do not have a permit. You will no longer be able to continue to cultivate, and the only people who should be doing that are registered cultivators. So again, the subsets get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they have had direct communication. If you were not a registered cultivator, you should not be cultivating while you are trying to get your permit. You will be enforced upon if that is discovered. So I will be
We
happy
can talk. We can talk offline.
Absolutely.
I'm just concerned about all of those folks who didn't get through the process as we were waiting and we were dragging along in the process of getting the money out for technical assistance. So those folks haven't had the benefit of getting any technical assistance.
And I
And
appreciate
now we're
that.
just having that program roll out. But we can talk
I
offline
am
if you'd
telling you
like.
that it is not all of those. It is only the subset of cultivators operating without a permit, and they know who they are.
Okay, but you have 364
Operating permits. That is manufacture,
submitted.
cultivation, distribution, delivery only. So it is a very wide range of permits, and we are talking explicitly about a 2020 deadline for those who had been registered
For the
cultivators only.
for the 207, is that 271 pending?
It's
So they're
everyone.
facing a February 2020
No.
deadline?
And that's what I want to talk to you about offline.
Okay, all right.
Okay? Any other questions? Okay. Let's talk about our equity grant funds. So we were fortunate enough, we applied for a grant from the state to provide resources to our equity applicants to what we are viewing as addressing barriers that there may be in the process of coming online as an equity applicant. We will be taking a resolution to council to accept the grant dollars at our 11/19 council meeting, and we have to continue to work out some of our details about how we want to administer that program. I want to point out a couple things. First of all, there were limitations in the state program about how the dollars could be spent, so we are bound by those limitations. Those limitations include a 10% cap of the granted awards on administering any program. So we have to be really careful about how we spend those dollars. And then for us, we really want to, we've acknowledged, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but $1 million doesn't go as far as you would think it would go. When we talk about starting this type of business, if we were to say we're going to, provide capital support, it costs $1 million just to build out one business. So the question is, how do we leverage these dollars to help as many people as possible in reducing, addressing their barriers to application? So some of the things that we've been thinking about might be paying for permit applications. We're already waiving for those applicants on our operating permit, but we can't waive state fees. Right? We can't waive building permit fees. We can't waive the fee to the air district or the fee to the, right? So those are things that might help them, and allow those dollars, which I think are fairly limited for the number of people who have shown interest in our process, to go through a process. Or to get through the process. We also want to make sure that the dollars we spend are on real tangible things that will have real tangible results. So I am hedging against getting into investing in things that we don't know how in the future they would carry on, how they would be operated and maintained on a future basis. And so we're going to be looking at things that are easy for our applicants to navigate and leverage the dollars. But that program has not been implemented. If you have ideas on how that program might operate, or places where you see an easy fix to a problem that you encountered going through a process, please share with that. And you can send that to our email address and just, title it Equity Program Ideas, something like that, because I think you have valuable intel and the barriers and the hurdles that you had to get over, where we might be able to help these applicants who are just coming into the industry. Okay, any questions on that? Yeah. In the purple. Yeah. That's you.
We did want to know there are some restrictions on what you guys are offering out there as far as the dispensary license, because we're trying to obtain the whatever dispensary license that are put out there. You guys got $1 million, but we can only do cultivation, manufacture, distribution, like everything across the line, but that one.
And delivery-only dispensary. You cannot have a storefront because Title V of the city code limits that number to 30 permits. And there are no permits at this moment available to anybody. There's probably a slide on it, but we are instituting, when we approved the core program in 2018, we committed to council that we would come back with a lottery process for dispensary permits, and a lottery process that would put core applicants at the front of the line, and we think we've developed that process, and we'll be bringing that back to council on November 19th. But until such time as there's a storefront dispensary permit available for lottery, that's not something that we as staff have any control over unless council decides that they're going to lift the cap of 30.
Okay, and then you said this is on a lottery system. Can it be by merit as well? Can we discuss that?
No, it is a straight lottery. That was the direction
lottery.
of council. Core applicants will have first. So I'll give you a taste of where we think we're going and what we're going to bring to council is that there will be a lottery and there will be a bucket of, is there a slide? Okay, we'll get to the slide. Well, I'll cover it now and then we can just skip it. There will be a bucket of core applicants and there will be a bucket of regular applicants, and we'll pick 1 through however many of the core applicants, and that's one list, and we'll pick 1 through however many of all other applicants, and until the core list is exhausted, right? So 1 through whatever, then we would move to all other applicants. And our preference is not that if another dispensary permit were to become available, that it won't be the same list. We will do another lottery and another list for that second dispensary if one were to become available. So that's how we anticipate the lottery process to work.
Okay. And how many do you think you guys are going to be releasing?
We aren't releasing any.
I mean, if you do you guys...
It's interesting. We took an item to council almost a year ago in November? Lawn Ledge, we went to, thank you, we got to council, and they referred it back to Lawn Ledge, and Lawn Ledge killed it. So that is the history. So a council member said to us, can we talk about lifting the cap? Okay, so we went to our Law and Legislation Committee, which is a subcommittee of the council, and we said, what would you like to do? And we gave a whole bunch of scenarios, and they said, send it to the council. We took it to the council, and council said, we're not really sure, send it back to Law and Ledge. And the Law and Legislation Committee at that time, the sentiment was we have enough storefront dispensaries. The move really is to delivery. We think adding more storefront dispensaries will only hurt our market right now, so we're gonna wait a year and come back and ask the question again. So our plan is to come back and ask the question again in January. But as of right now, we have no plan. It is up to the will of council to determine whether or not they want to add or lift the cap. Yep.
So,
You're gonna lie detector too, right?
she's got the other mic.
Do you wanna go that way and I'll talk to this thing?
Yeah, if you could talk to that, then that would work. So as a cultivator, I think many of us are concerned right now with the issue of having to go completely off generators. And now for us would be a year and a half. We have to be 50% off already, I believe. And, I've been trying to dig into if there are going to be any types of grant writing for solar opportunities for cultivation, because we either have to go 100% on grid, which can be up to $600,000 for the location that we're at right now, or also, building up our solar panels. That can be pretty exponential as well.
Yeah, right now the city doesn't have plans to do any grant making around solar or power. That might be something you could pursue through SMUD. Any other?
Is the Office of Cannabis Policy doing anything to break up the current monopolies of dispensaries?
So we're going to have a conversation about that in another slide, so let's hold up, okay?
Okay.
Might be the next slide. I don't care.
As far as you said, changing how you're going to roll out the program, you just mean how you're going to spend the money, or do you mean how you're going to qualify people for the actual core program?
Not qualify people for the actual core program, but how we might choose to spend the money. There is a change coming, and it's probably on another slide. Let's just go through the slides. Okay, manufacturing. We had a stakeholders meeting on the 14th. Raise your hand if you were here. Raise your hand. Nope, just for small manufacturing. Just for small oh, we did have a big I guess we had, this is not my small, this is my small. Yeah, we were in that room. Do you remember being in that room? Raise your hand if you were here. We got a couple of us. Okay, everybody from that meeting who was there, and this is for the videotape world because clearly they're not here, owes us homework. We had a really robust conversation, and for those of you who may have watched it at council, we were talking about raising the cap on small manufacturers from $100,000 to $500,000, and council said, well, is that really the right number? Is it $1 million? And our stakeholders came, and they had great information about how the market has changed. When I used to put it in a plastic bag and I had one label, now I put it in childproof packaging and I have 4 labels, and that means my cost has gone up, 25%. I have to have at least this many employees simply to turn out products, simply to sell, just to buy my product is $500,000. I haven't paid my employees, I haven't done my security, I haven't, done my insurance, I haven't paid to put the lights on, I haven't, right? So what's the right number? And we're still working on that definition. So for small manufacturers, and I think the key around small manufacturing is it doesn't require a conditional use permit. So while we want to provide an incentive for people to get into the market and a pathway for those to enter our market, we also want to ensure that we're maintaining our requirements for land use and the conditional use permit at the appropriate level. So that is a conversation that is continuing, and we are looking to our small manufacturers if they really want to have this conversation to help us in having this conversation with council, because we can't do it without them. So, and we're going to send out reminder letters to that group tomorrow. Volatile manufacturing. Anybody here want to do volatile manufacturing? Okay, so anybody know what happened around volatile manufacturing? It died. And we as staff are unable to bring it back in the near term. So what I would say to you is if this is an important policy conversation for you, you should be contacting your council members because they can have a conversation about whether or not to bring this back as a policy conversation at council. We brought a pass for publication of the ordinance to council, and that's where it died. And so we cannot as staff bring back reconsideration. So, is that, any questions on that? Otherwise, it'll be a while. Hemp. We have a plan to extend our moratorium to another 10 months and 15 days on cultivation, and eventually that will include storage, just not the way we've written it. And we are going to bring at council on the 5th a 45-day moratorium on manufacturing. And what our concerns were on the cultivation and why we're now bringing it forward on manufacturing have proven true in that we have seen both a bust on what they thought was pot and it turned out to be hemp, so we know it's an attractive nuisance. And there was just another one the other day that was all hemp, and you just can't tell the difference. And we need to figure out a way, if we're gonna allow hemp in the city, how to do it the right way and how to not confuse it with this type of cannabis. And so that we can move forward thoughtfully on it, unlike the airplane that we're all currently flying in, which is cannabis with THC that we are rebuilding every week at council. So any questions on hemp? Yeah.
How are you controlling the manufacturing products that are coming into the city from the outside?
So it's interesting, that's a conversation around distribution and hemp, and we aren't right now because we don't regulate that model. That's not something, you know, we're not looking at grocery store shelves and looking at packaging to see what has hemp in it. Because that's at the co-op right now. And so it's certainly a conversation to have, but we are not right now. Anybody else? Storefront dispensary ownership. So, question, what are we doing to stop the monopoly? Well, then the monopoly happened. It happened under the rules that we had in place. What you call the monopoly, I do not call the monopoly. What happened, happened. I'm not going to qualify anything. That's not my role. So you can qualify it, I won't. So there is a concentration of ownership. I'm not going to say monopoly. So our expectation is that in the very near future, we will, through an emergency ordinance, add a definition of what transfer means. And there is a distinction between transfer of a permit and transfer of a business, or what an underlying business. And there have been a lot of changes in our industry. Let's not forget, which I think people want to just say it is what it is now today, but it was never anything different. Well, up until however many months ago, there was still a collective model in place. And under the collective model, this half of the room could own, right, or be an owner, and this half of the room could join them. And that's how collective worked, because we were all members, right? And that didn't change until really recently. So then the question is, what does owning a business mean? And are we going to say that these two people sitting right there are the sole two people who can only ever, forevermore, own a business? What if he wins the lottery and moves to Jamaica? Or something else happens? And then, has ownership changed? You know, so there is no other industry in which we say to any of the businesses out in Sacramento, you can never, never, ever change anything underlying the structure of your business ever. And so we've got to figure a way through that. And we had a process that we have detailed to council in 2016. It was audited in 2017. They said, document it better. You better bet that this woman documents a lot. And so we have a process, and we have a process that we have been true to that process, and that process had an outcome, and now maybe we are going to change our process. And the truth is, staff has been looking at this for quite a while, saying, you know what, we probably need to change to our process. We probably need to change to our code. Our code does not reflect that we have this artificial lid on something, which it makes it like nothing, right? When there's a cap, it makes it different than, I'll say, the 100% ABC model, where you can change a business, but you can just go apply for another license. When there's a limited number, you can't. So we will address probably a temporary definition of ownership that will give us some time. It's not going to be 60 days, it might be 90, and it might be 120 to come back to council with something that reflects the fact that this is an industry now that was held by a collective, right, before, and now can be held by something other than somebody who belongs to a collective, right? And what does that mean? And my
Stockholder shareholders. Not everyone owned them. It was a group.
correct. But
False narrative. That's not true.
well, what I am saying is that
Dispensaries, and another business accrued 4 of them. And so you have many monopolies forming within a group of only 26, right? There's 26 operating. So one group controls 13 and another group controls 4. And then there's a couple other fragmented groups, and they still operate within each other too. So
So I'm not going to have an argument or a discourse on, I am telling you the model under which we regulated, which allowed movement, whether it is a nonprofit, non-benefit corporation, and so the process was the process until it changes, and it will in all likelihood change in the next few weeks on a temporary basis, and then we will move forward from there. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, question over here first. He had the mic.
Yeah, he's completely right. Back in 2018 and before, I was actually attempting to get a dispensary license. What I was told is we already have our group. And I actually have a letter literally from Joe Devlin that I was trying to communicate to him to get a dispensary license. So what you guys are talking about is people are monopolizing on that whole situation.
I didn't say those words. In fact, I didn't say. I actually think that they said that in the context of lifting a cap. They sure did, and it's on video in the conversation at the Law and Legislation Committee. And those are the policymakers. We have the regulators and the implementers who move through a licensing process that we have outlined as continuity, right? Our expectation is at 100%. I'm not going to get into describing continuity here because I think we've done that already. So the process will change, and it will apply to limiting ownership on a go-forward basis. So we will roll that out over the next couple of weeks.
Lainey, quick question. In the context of this policy, are the members looking at opening up the cap, or is that off the table?
I don't believe in the context of this conversation they're looking at that. Fixing one problem at a time. Right. Yeah.
Hi, Lainey. You said it will apply to future ownerships. Can you give some more detail on the rationale for that?
So I think that I am not an attorney. I'm not going to, you are an attorney, but I am not an attorney. I don't think we will retroactively go back and take away permits.
House rules, please do not talk unless you have the mic because we are having this recorded. And if you don't talk into the mic, then we cannot hear it in the recording. So please do not talk until you have the mic. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, you said that they used to be collectives, correct? And that's kind of how it got murky. But my only question is, when you file a BOP, doesn't it state that you have to list all owners on that? So at that time, wouldn't there have been a time to say, hey, there's basically the same owners on 13 different permits in some way, shape, or form of some LLCs or cap companies or interest in there? Because that's the time that I know I got to put my name on the paper. I'm just wondering why that wasn't thought of at
Currently,
that time.
there's no prohibition in our code. I say currently being that limits that. No, it's.
I'm not saying you did it. I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm just asking the question that in any other good context, I'm not calling it a monopoly. I'm just saying 13 out of 30 seems like something that, you know, and I understand they required them when people didn't want licenses and all that, but going forward, as we came out of collectives and going legal and through this process, that now that everybody's starting to see it's a process, because even on your guys' side, it's seeing it's a process that we're going through as an industry, that I'm just wondering why.
Which is why we are looking at making changes.
Okay.
How's it now? All right, we're moving on. Oh, we talked about this, yay. So, future council meetings, 11/5, our extension on cultivation and our addition of a moratorium on manufacture for hemp, and limiting ownership for storefront dispensaries. So if you are interested in that, my expectation for the intervening time between November 6th and however many days we make this moratorium is the question about what do we do next? Because I think that it's important to acknowledge the fact that underlying businesses may change. And what do we do about that? And I think that there will be a limitation on ownership that will prevent what you've described. But the question is, how can businesses underneath change in what is now a new marketplace? And we'll be soliciting ideas for what that might look like. Could be the ABC model. BCC has a model. I don't know if it's applicable to what we're considering because there isn't a cap in theirs, and that's where it gets really difficult, in that we do have a cap, and maybe that is the next conversation. That I forgot who asked it, right? Will lifting the cap be a maybe that's a question for the 5th, because it will seed the conversation that we all already know we're bringing back as staff at the beginning of the new year around the cap, and having that conversation and letting the market decide. Anyway, so that's what's coming up on the 5th. On the 19th, we're going to accept our grant funds, and we're going to talk about the core program, and that is our lottery procedures, extending it to adopted and stepchildren, and then an update from GSL and the Asian Chamber on the core. So if you're a core applicant and you want to come and share your experience, that would be interesting too, what you've gotten from the programs. We have another stakeholder meeting, 12/5, and frankly, it says no meeting in November, but we might want to do a meeting in between, right, to discuss this concept of ownership changes and what a model might look like under the new, where you are owned by LLCs and different business models where people come and go. We learned went on our trip up to Canada that they're owned by, they're publicly traded. So what do you do there? She's got 10 shares, you've got 10, you've got 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, right? What does that mean? So is that something that could potentially happen here, and do we want to address it now, or do we want to say that we'll get to it when the time comes? Yeah.
One of our concerns for expanding dispensaries is I own multiple cultivations, and so is getting our product to market, being able to represent our product in a local market. The city licensed over 100 cultivations without expanding its ability to sell that or go directly to market or become vertically integrated. And not all of them, but some of the dispensaries have been able to become vertically integrated, or some of their owners or partners own cultivations and distributions elsewhere, YOLO or the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland. And so it makes it even harder for us to compete as cultivators or micro business owners to do business without being able to go take our product directly to market. And I guess my question is will operators that are currently operating be eligible as core applicants to get a dispensary? I mean, I've been waiting a long time to get a dispensary as well. How is that process going to work for someone like me?
It's interesting. As far as if the cap stays at 30, core applicants will always have the priority. If the cap changes, my gut from council, although it's not direction, is that a certain first number will immediately be available only for core applicants, simply by what has already been said by our council. But I don't know the answer to that, because I can't tell you how many they may or may not expand to
What about the seats or the licenses that aren't being used? Isn't there like 4 of them that are currently aren't inactive, or so there's actually only 26 operating right now out of the 30? I believe that's true. So out of the 13, I think there's only 26.
I don't believe that's the case. I think that our math and your math are different.
Well, if
but-
that's the case, if there even is 1 or 2 of those available, how are those gonna be dispersed?
They are not available, and if they were available, they would go through the lottery, which hopefully we're going to be adopting on the 19th of November, and that says that core applicants will get first priority at those dispensaries. And that was by direction from council from October 2018. Any other, yeah.
So we already ran through the program. We have certificates and so forth from the program. My question to you is the money that's being used right now, we've already started submitting applications on the process. How long is it going to take for us to get fast track through this system in order to get the permits that we have already applied for?
So, not knowing what permits you've applied for, you have an operating permit? Do you have a CUP?
No, basically what we did is we applied for events license, delivery, the non-storefront delivery, and we've just recently submitted it to our, the Asian Chambers of Commerce, the Sacramento program, in order to get the process started. Like, how long will that take, and will those dollars be used immediately to like get us do this program, or do we have to wait so many months?
So what our program offers is expedited licensing within the city process. So if you have applied for a special events permit, which if you applied for a cannabis special event, it would come through our office, and we haven't seen that yet. If you applied for a special events permit through the Community Development Department and their special events, then we need to redirect you back to our office. And then if you have applied for a CUP or a business operating permit, you would have expedited processing. And if you don't feel you're getting that, you need to let us know.
Well, that's what I did. I'm already registered with the BCC. I went online.
Okay, BCC is not us. BCC is the state of California.
Okay, yeah. Well, basically, I went online and I started applying. They, didn't give me the exact direction that I needed to apply, so I went and applied through a certain process. And once I got done with that, I did submit it to to the Sacramento Chamber, which forwarded to Zaria. So I wanted to make sure, did I do it the right way, or
So-
is there a certain process that is specific?
Right, so I think we're getting a little confused. You need to be licensed on 2 fronts. You have to be licensed by the state and you have to be licensed by us. And they're 2 completely separate processes. We will know when the state has an application for you, but you have to be going through our process as well. And so that's something that we need to make sure that you're going through our process. So maybe we could set up some time offline and talk about that. Any other questions? It's the usual contact information. I think that means we're done. Thank you all. They're both